argued for a long time that, in fact, I've been arguing as long as I've been doing this, really, but I've argued for a very long time that this brown dwarf isn't like here. It's not like at the same distance as Jupiter or Saturn or even out to Neptune. You know, it's got to be a long way out, because it really is such a large body, if what I'm talking about and other people have posited as well through different ideas. If it is out there, it's got to be some distance away. But that does not mean that it's not capable of having a quite dramatic effect on the sun, even at a considerable distance, in the way I've just described.
Okay. And given that you're positing that the Anunnaki have been here, are still here, they didn't, if I'm assuming during this cataclysmic event, they had to be aware of it. Whatever, they sort of took off in their spaceships and let most of the humans die and so on. Yeah. Then in essence, they're back. They've been here all along. They haven't abandoned the planet in essence. But you're also talking about us coming to a time in which this is a possibility. I mean, do you follow that notion that we're actually getting to a place where, as far out as the brown dwarf may be, it may be exerting an influence, starting to exert more of an influence than it has in the past number of years, that we're getting close to a cycle, if it's a 13,000 year cycle, whatever. I mean, are you, of that persuasion? Do you believe that we're going through a cycle?
It's very, very difficult to say, because the timings of it, to me, are not concrete. I cannot say to you, it has perihelion then, it has aphelion then, therefore it's got so many years before it makes a move. Now, clearly, the Anunnaki knew where it was. They knew what point it would interact with the sun or move through the solar system, which it is capable of doing, I'm quite sure, and at what point it could potentially have a catastrophic effect on the Earth. We don't have that information. I don't have that information. I don't think Zecharia Sitchin has that information. The datings of the perihelion transit of Nibiru is something that is controversial. Different people hold different opinions. My opinion is that as time's gone on, I've had less of an opinion about it rather than more of an opinion about it, because there are so many good arguments for various different dates that it's very difficult to say, oh, well, that's the right one, that's the wrong one. I think it's a little, in answering your question in a slightly oblique way, I think this whole subject is a little bit like quantum physics, insofar as the observer affects events. And in this particular instance, I think the crucial factor right now is us, because what we're doing here on the planet at the moment is creating the kind of technology that we've already discussed in this interview that could potentially mean that we go out to them, or that we in some way usurp territory within the solar system that is theirs. Say, for instance, they had a base on the moon, or they had a base on Mars, or some such, and we get into the circumstance where we go over there and stick a flag in the ground and say, right, this is ours, we're going to do this. We are potentially making ourselves known to them as a threat. And again, this was something I was very interested in exploring in the novels, which is very difficult to do in a non-fiction book beyond just sort of speculating. What would they do? How would they react to us? Would they immediately come flying back here and, somehow try and destroy us, nip us in the bud? Would they send a diplomatic mission to say, look, okay, we're here, but, you have to stay on your planet. Don't try going out anywhere out into the solar system, or there's trouble, which I think a lot of people think might be a possibility. The aliens have generally done that. They've said, the moon, no further. Or right. Do they work amongst us in order to try and change our way of thinking, or to prevent our space programs or our technology from gaining the appropriate level where we would become a threat?
Well, yeah, and that's a very interesting notion. Is what are their tactics, and well, what I would say the corollary to that is, how are their tactics, or aren't their tactics, being reflected in the actions of what we call the powers that be, or the Anunnaki, or the Illuminati, being sort of steered by the Anunnaki behind the scenes. We are going to a break now. We're at the top of the hour, Andy, and we'll continue on the other side. This is fascinating discussion. The name of the music is Afro Dreams Ascension. And so we'll be having a 4-minute break here, okay?
Okay.
So I think we're just about to go to break. And I'm just checking.
Dit is ArgusoogRadio.
Hi, this is Carrie Cassidy, Project Camelot, Whistleblower Radio, and we are talking to Andy Lloyd about the Dark Star and the Anunnaki and all things concerned with that. Andy, are you still with us?
I am indeed.
Wonderful. So we were just entering some very interesting territory, in my opinion, in terms of, basically we're talking about the idea that the Anunnaki are here and they're behind the scenes, still with their hand involved in our destiny in some way. And also the notion which they may have basis. In fact, we have gotten, again, going to Henry Deacon, Arthur Neumann, his testimony was that he had been to the bases on Mars, that he used what is in essence called a jump gate, and that he had gone back and forth numerous times working a job there. And that so in essence, it was an underground base on Mars that was populated by members of the Anunnaki, as well as human, and possibly some other races from various other places, other planets. So that is something that he talked about. And he actually went on stage, in case you're not aware, in Barcelona with, at the end of a conversation or a presentation that Bob Dean had given on Mars, and basically said he had been on Mars. And that was absolutely earth-shaking. That would have been the first time a human had gone on stage and in the public domain and actually stated that. And he's quite a brilliant man, Arthur Neumann. He's gone underground at the moment. And as he's actually gone underground in part because of the heat that happened as a result of him doing that.
Well,
so,
understandable, yeah.
Yeah. And so if you're given that information and you want to believe that it's actually possibly real, then you're looking at the fact that, yes, in essence, they are running a base on Mars. We may be invading their territory, or we may have plans to invade their territory. There may be power struggles going on behind the scenes. And as was always the case, at least with the Anunnaki, there would certainly still be power struggles going on between them. So you've got more than one type of power struggle going on with different possibilities. And I'm wondering what you're thinking about that. I'm not done with your book, so I don't know exactly where you go with all that. And I don't want you to give it away, but I'd love it if you would talk about, how you sort of, what your thought process was in relationship to all of these things we're talking about.
The first thought that pops into my head is to try and imagine it from their point of view, and that is the likelihood is that the Anunnaki are a more intelligent and complex race than we, that we have some of their attributes, that we have the same sort of competitive nature and the same ambitions and the same drive, but obviously we have to fulfill those ambitions and that drive and that complex life within a mortal lifespan, whereas they have, well, from our point of view, many, many generations with which to fulfill their life plans and what they want to achieve. So therefore, their plans, their missions, what they want to achieve, they can spread out over huge periods of time. And I would imagine their society to be not only very high tech, but very complex, the people themselves to be unbelievably brilliant in comparison to ourselves. And so it's very, very difficult to imagine it from where we're at. because it's a little bit like